So, Yahya, we've known each other, I don't know, what, 20 years? How long have we known each other?
Maybe 20 years.
Maybe 20 years. I used to come to the Hartman Institute with your father when I was still there, so that's 30 years then. We seem to know each other from everywhere. Can't even know where we know each other from. But this is the first time we've had the honor of having you in our home and in Italy.
Thank you very much. What a wonderful moment.
It is. It's beautiful for us to have you here. I think we've had Christians praying here, but we've never had a Muslim praying here, and Jews also pray here from time to time, you know. So, yeah, I'm really glad that we had your thoughtful and prayerful and friendlyful presence with us. And we're sitting here and talking, like friends, and like there's no problems. And for the rest of the world, there's so many problems between Jews and Muslims. And now with the situation in Gaza, there's so little trust and so many relationships seem to have fallen apart. Try to give me your perspective on how this moment looks to you, given everything that's going on around, both in Israel and in Jewish-Muslim relations generally.
Well, unfortunately, I'm afraid that the impact of what is happening in Gaza, in Israel, between religious leaders, believers, citizens, governments, is having a very negative impact even in Europe, even in Italy, and worldwide. And I'm afraid that this will create a great gap of relations, of understanding, of cooperation, of brotherhood between Jews and Muslims, because there is a great confusion of misleading theological interpretations, very harsh political statements, and persons have been raped, have been killed, and families do not know where are they going to live. And the perception of all this in the West, at least, and even in the East, is very polarizing, and this is creating an interpretation where apparently one needs to take the side of one against the other, and this is an approach which is completely foolish and has no doctrinal, spiritual, religious, concrete outcome. So we have to work to for the future to overcome this negative impact of.
So you're saying that the issue is not theological. Is there a theological basis to the present challenge, or is it purely political and contextual?
Well,
or in other words, do Jews and Muslims have to work out theological issues between them or not?
Well, it could be interesting. I mean, for a theologian, for a believer, to share with a brother from Jewish side the teachings of theology, it can only be enriching. And it could be even more now needed because theology is hijacked on, if I may say, maybe both sides in an asymmetric way by so-called Muslim scholars or some few.
Can you explain that? In what way is theology on the Muslim side hijacked?
The Muslim side is hijacked because they pretend to have to confuse the research for legitimacy of land and of property and of government with a Islamic agenda, and very negatively in this agenda they are going against any kind of respect and brotherhood of the Jews. So this is not Islamic theology. This is confusion of propaganda, pretending that this is something that is defending the interests of Islam or the interests of people such as the Palestinians. And on the other side, you have some rabbis that now present readings of the sources of the Jewish scriptures, giving legitimacy for the destruction of people. So maybe we need to have a theological counter-narrative to allow theology to be again a proper theology and not to be hijacked by other agendas.
What are the key issues you think we would have to discuss here?
But unfortunately, there will be a gap after this conflict is over. And I think that to start to fill the gap, we have to go back to really the essentials of our theological beliefs.
Namely?
Which is go back to the unity of God, go back to the common family and reference to Abraham, but not only with words, but also in terms of trying to understand the richness of the unity of God and the Abrahamic prophecy as a guideline for our cooperation in the future.
So what you're really saying is that God is above religion, and when these religions get into conflict, what we need to do is to rediscover a God who is higher than the religious diversity.
Yes, and on the other side also to recognize that there is God in our religions, and it's the same God.
Very interesting you should talk about same God, because we've been having a conversation about the problem of same God between different religions, and my own theological work that focuses on this notion of the same God as a bridge of moving forward. And this ties to something else that I've been talking about, and that is that I think that there's a crisis in Judaism. And the crisis in Judaism is a crisis of God. In other words, Judaism is in crisis because it's lost God. And on the flip side, the key to recovering relations is the recovering of God in other religions as that impacts us. Would you say that there's a similar crisis in Islam?
I don't know. I think that the main crisis in theological debate is the lack of an updated serious spiritual research of the doctrinal meanings of the Quran or the Hadith, on how to try to understand the nuances of revelation, but also to link them to the contemporary intellectual and social challenges.
So that's a very intellectual exercise. I want to say something more extreme. You know that with the rise of many contemporary forms of Islam, we have the erosion of Sufism, we have the erosion of Muslim philosophy, and consequently, God very often becomes a concept that drives a social, political reality rather than a true spiritual enterprise. And that's why I want to push you again and to say, and I think the same is true for Judaism, I think the crisis of God is not that there isn't a God concept, that there isn't a God experience. So you're talking to me about updating certain concepts so that they're contemporary and current and there's fresh thought. And I'm saying to you, well, actually, in the Jewish case, what we need is a fresh God experience. And I want to argue that the same is true for Islam. You wouldn't say that?
I see a lot of bigotry or formalism or pan-Islamic ideological interpretations. And of course, I think we agree that all these extremist agendas have forgotten God. But I would like to go back and to recover the true narrative of theology, of doctrine, of religion, and not allow that this is hijacked again by bigotry, by formalism, by literalism.
And wouldn't a true experience of God have that effect? Or put differently, if true Sufism was allowed to re-emerge after so much energy has gone into suppressing it, would that not itself serve as a corrective?
It can be a key starting point, but we need to, if I may say, in the West, you have the lack of knowledge of what is religion. In the Muslim community nowadays, we do not know anymore what is true religion and what is the false interpretation. So we of course we have to start going back through God, through the center, through the principle. But we also have to find the ways to have the reading of the revelation in a inspired and even in a way that we can implement this in nowadays life in all fields. Otherwise it's only an abstract metaphysical dimension to rediscover God, which is very important, but forgetting what is his message, what are his symbols, are the teachings of the prophets and the saints, and how to implement them in the West and in the East. Even being political leaders or citizens, but with inspiration that has some roots in doctrine. We are losing the doctrine, and of course this is a consequence of forgetting God. But we have to find ways to defend and to present the doctrine according to the traditional view in contemporary times. And what is happening now is a decadence of this research for the science of revelation.
It's interesting. I'm wondering to what extent there's a similar problem in Judaism. I'm not sure we would put the problem in that way. Largely because I think we still do have a very lively tradition of interpretation. Our issue is not so much conceptual as much as getting balances between different elements, and to me, an experiential component. I think there may be a difference here between what Judaism goes through. But that actually leads me to the next question, which is, here you are, a Muslim leader in a Catholic country. To what extent do you feel that Catholics have what to teach us in this kind of a process? And to what extent do you think that they've done some of the work that you're describing?
Well, but at least the Catholic Church and the Catholic movements and the Christian Catholic, even monks, friars, sisters, they have in these last centuries shared the challenge of the issue of modernity, or the problem of not being only the exclusive religious identity, not only because they had to share this with other religious identities, such as the Jews and the Muslims and the Buddhists and the Hindus, but also because they had to understand that secularism was brainwashing any reference to religion. So they had to manage and discuss and try to provide solutions, not to lose the believers. And this internal and external discussion is, I think, quite important for the Muslim world, because we tend to have either a conflicting reality against the West, against modernity, against Western politics, so we are in somehow putting into conflict a traditional Islamic religious awareness with what happens in the contemporary society. While the West and Christians and the Catholic Christians and even the Protestant Christians have at least tried to understand what is happening with modernity, what are the causes of the crisis, and how can we face this new scenario without forgetting how to be Christians.
So why are Muslims stuck in the way they are? Why are they positioned in this antithetical situation? What prevents them from going forward?
There is again, for me, it's a question of intellectual decadence that could not find a way how to face the post-colonial impact the modernity crisis and the new secularism as a different way of brainwashing believers in the East. So that's where, and that's how. So the reaction is formalism, bigotry.
How do you mean bigotry? What do you mean when you say bigotry?
Which means to pretend to defend the corpus of religion, but forgetting the meaning, the spirit, the reason, and the enlightenment of religion. So it's just defending Islam as it is a political party or as it was a football club.
Outward observance. So I'm a great believer that religions should help another. I know the classical paradigm is one in which religions compete, and at the end of the day there should be one winner. And we've got a serious problem because we've been at it now for 2,000 years with Christians and for 1,300 years with Muslim, and there's no clear winner. So let's just keep, the game going and the battle fighting. Maybe we need a different paradigm. Maybe we should be thinking of all these religions as God-given ways in which we can help each other, even across those religious divides. So I've applied the term co-evolution. We all have to grow together. But even without that loaded term, just to help each other. So how can other religions help Islam?
But Islam and Muslims should try to help themselves through the others.
How so? What would that look like? How can they help each other? How can they help themselves through the other?
Well, but there is a teaching of the Quran that says that first of all you have to change yourself, and then eventually around you everything will change accordingly. And on the other side, the competition you were mentioning is a competition on good deeds. It's not a competition.
The Quran also says that, right?
Exactly.
Do you want to tell us what the Quran says specifically?
Well, but this is exactly the verse of the Quran that invites believers to compete in good deeds and eventually to understand the reasons of differences in a different condition after existence. So this is so the competition is only, as you say, probably is a co-evolution. It's a cooperation in good deeds. While unfortunately, what we are witnessing now is a competition in order to criticize and to find the negative aspects on the other. Instead of changing myself, looking for the good, I'm only concentrated on demolishing and criticizing the dark sides of my interlocutor.
Can you illustrate for your own life how the sense of competition for the good has played out? How is that? How have you been in competition or been inspired in a kind of spiritual competition? Did you ever meet Christer Stendahl, Bishop Christer Stendahl?
No.
He used to come to the meetings we had at Hartman back in the 90s. He used to speak of holy envy, which is an internal Christian category. You're envious of someone else, wanting to do the best with him. He said we have to cultivate holy envy between religions. But that's the same as the Quranic ideal of competing with each other in good deeds. Can you illustrate how that has played out in your life?
Well, according to my education, maybe I had the chance to be educated with considering life with a goal for knowledge. So every sign, every situation in life, every meeting is an occasion to learn something that is part of a discovery of God's will and also of God's science. And if this is the intention of your life in every situation, this contributes to the direction of looking for a higher good and recognizing the good in every situation and trying to struggle to have this good that should win on the evil. But so if the niyyah, if the intention of a Muslim in his life is knowledge of Allah, as you were mentioning before, through the recognition of good signs and good ways to better understand the development of life, you are concentrating on the good. This does not mean that you are a good man, but at least you are trying to orient your thoughts, your actions, and your life towards this discovery. And if I may say, I think that if you are honest in this research, you also realize that you have bad, dark sides in your soul, and the misery, the negative situations that each one of us has to face every day are part of the trial to overcome these. But so we are not blind on the negative, but we are not concentrated on the negative, and we are looking for through dialogue to something that enriches us and, if I may say, enlightens us, but discovering His holy will and not our agenda. I think this is the perspective that I was taught for the education, and that, if I may say, is a lot missing in the orientation of education in some of my brothers and sisters in the Muslim world.
But you're saying that there was a precondition. You said the precondition was having an open mind, or I would add to that an open heart. You were born into that open mind and open heart. Sadly, many of your brothers and sisters in faith seem to have been shaped differently. How can they come to have that open heart and open mind?
Well, first of all, one should recognize that he is not open-minded and he is narrow-minded. And secondly, try to have a approach on life which is with a thirst for discovery, which is not take it easy and be happy or satisfied.
Thirst for discovery means even going beyond your own religion as part of that discovery.
Well, religion is the mean to discover something that is the Lord of religions.
But that means that as a Muslim, your quest for discovery through the Lord of religions would take you to a deeper understanding of Judaism and Christianity or whatever. So because also, God is greater, then the quest for God takes you beyond your particular religion. Like that?
Yes, but you need to be consistent with your identity and your grammar and your...
I don't know why. They just spent half an hour talking to me, and I said this over half an hour, and you've just said it in one sentence. So this is this is competing in excellence, how you said that so beautifully and simply. Yeah, that's exactly it. The Lord, you have to have the quest for the Lord of all religions, and that curiosity and wanting to know takes you beyond that. So given the fact that many people don't have that knowledge, what would be the role of friendship with people of other religions in cultivating that approach?
Well, as you know, one of the roots of the word friendship in the Islamic tradition is, the root is sidq, which means eventually it brings to sadiq, which is friend, but it's a very dear friend. And what makes this friend dear is the secret meaning of sidq, which is sincerity, honesty. So to be a friend, we have to be honest to ourselves and to our friend. And so we cannot be true friends if we are not honest to God and honest to ourselves and honest to our friend. Otherwise, as it is, and if I may say, especially sometimes in the West, we are friends but not respecting each other. We call each other friends without being friends. But to be a friend, according to the Islamic tradition, I think, and to all religious doctrines, is something that is tasting together the mystery of his truth. So then I become and I discover to be more honest, more sincere, but not for myself, but with my friend. And this is a wonderful opportunity that is unfortunately in crisis. Because as I was mentioning, one pretends to be a friend of the other, but he does not know his friend.
Well, more than that, they don't know God as the friend. I quoted earlier in another interview this expression from a Christian authority on the Middle Ages, who's this expression, you and me and Christ between us. And you just gave this your own Islamic expression when you said, tasting God together.
Yes, yes.
So I totally agree that, we don't want those superficial friendships. We want friendships that lead us to tasting God together. That's a beautiful expression. And it's that sense of tasting that potentially takes us beyond our specific religion into that quest of God that goes beyond our particular religion. So let me talk to you about one particular instance of such a personality. And that's Francis of Assisi. I know you mentioned to me that you come here more or less annually. And when I put you on the terrace and you looked, you knew the name of each church here in the neighborhood. So you have a degree of proficiency in the spiritual geography of this place. How do you see St. Francis as a figure in a context of the conversations we're having here? And how do you see Assisi as a locality for realizing this kind of vision that we obviously share?
Well, Assisi in the life of a saint such as St. Francis has a very important and symbolic impact, because it was here that he somehow, coming from a very aristocratic family, he said he left this wealthy background to be concentrated on the search for God. Already this example is a very universal teaching, because it teaches us that we have to find the faith and the courage to go beyond our idea of what we are according to the background that we have been living in our childhood. But in order to be an adult, we can change completely our habits and discover a new way of a new approach to life. Secondly, not in Assisi, but when he left here, one of his travels was in Egypt during the Crusades. And as you know, he tried to have dialogue with the representatives of the Pope, not succeeding to interrupt the war. And eventually he went up to the meeting with the Sultan Malik al-Kamil, and he discovered that the so-called ignorant enemy against the religion as the unique religion that should have been Christianity was a very wise politician, a very deeply religious intellectual, and the life in the Muslim scenario was managed between prayer times, greetings of peace, and a devotion to God that he was not expecting to receive. When he came back to Assisi, his brothers would not recognize him. They found him strange. And I think this last episode is quite a symbolic one. We need to be friends, even if there is something shocking, as the beginning of the life of St. Francis, or we need to partner with our friends in order to challenge some misconceptions and eventually to try to cooperate together for a better knowledge, even with the intention of peace. But eventually we need to also respect our friend, even if some situations change so radically that we do not recognize him. I was mentioning with your colleague, the Chief Rabbi of Milan, Arbib, the Islamic interpretation of the story of Prophet Joseph with his brothers. They try to kill him or pretend to kill him, but then when eventually they meet him again, they do not recognize him. And this question of the lack of recognition, I think, is one of the main obstacles for not being good friends. Because either you have the superficial way, or you have the friends that do not recognize you. And friendship is a challenge to mutual recognition time after time.
So what advice would you give? I'll tell you why I asked this, because we're designing this house of friendship and hope. So if we are to bring people through there and to conceptualize it, what would you say about how friendship has to be cultivated in a way that would allow people to recognize each other?
Well, if I may say, maybe we have been speaking of friendship up to now, but the second term of your program is very important, hope, because I feel again this word has the risk of being empty, an empty word now. Nobody hopes. And nobody knows what is hope.
Yeah, they're just optimistic.
Yes, yes.
Right, yeah,
or they do not know what to hope for, or who can we rely on for some more hope. While linking hope and friendship with a spiritual and interreligious perspective, I think gives some concrete, serious approach. And gives the added value of hope in life and of friendship for a believer.
So what is it that one should be hoping for?
Well, one should, if I may say, according again to the Islamic tradition, one should hope that God will not forget him. While, as we were mentioning at the beginning, our mistake is that we are forgetting God. But we are never afraid, taqwa, that God will forget us because we are such a disaster that we do not, we are not anymore under the spiritual influence of his communication. It's not a question of being Islamophobic. We should be afraid that the patience of God ends. And because we are so stubborn in our foolish, empty lives, as you say, without God, that our stubbornness is even risks to be more strong than God's patience.
So what you're saying about hope is the same thing we said about friendship. In other words, that ultimate friendship has God as its reference, and ultimate hope has God as its reference.
There is no hope and no friendship without God. No possibility. I mean, for a believer. Any believer, I think, but according to the Islamic perspective, the one can be in true desperation if God has lost his hope on mankind.
You know, the term hope for us actually is an acronym. It stands for House of Prayer and Education.
Oh.
No, it's also hope. It's also
Okay.
hope, but it's House of Prayer and Education, which then makes me wonder, to what extent would Muslims be open, or would Muslims be afraid to be exposed to the prayer experience of other faiths? Because we're talking about growing, remembering God, cultivating friendship, cultivating hope. All these things are cultivated through prayer. Do you think Muslims are, or should be, or should not be afraid of exposure to the depth of the prayer experience of another faith?
But again, they might be afraid, but they are afraid not with a reason. They are afraid for ignorance. So it's good that you also add in hope education, because the education to prayer is a very important methodology, which means that maybe discovering how my brother or my sister Jew is praying and worshiping our same God in a different way, it helps me and it inspires my prayer as well. While the ignorance of the other in his prayer brings not a mystery, but actually a prejudice.
A suspicion.
A suspicion.
Has this been your experience, to be inspired by the prayer of another faith?
Yes, definitely.
How
definitely.
so? Where?
Well, I would say meetings, masters, or seeing funerals or prayers from different communities worldwide has always been, if I may say, a moment of a very, even, I would say, even an emotional impact, because coming especially from the West, at least in the East, I feel that persons have still kept an instinct to go towards God in a ritual way. I mean, you don't have to go very far. In Greece, for instance, some Orthodox Christians, when they drive you through the island and they pass in front of a church, they greet and pay respect to this place by making their sign of the cross. And this is something which is quite normal for them, but this is a symbolic ritual moment of prayer that at the end teaches us the connection with the divine, as you was mentioning.
So here's the thought that comes to me as I listen to you. What these Christians have is a sense of the holy.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking about crisis in Judaism and crisis in Islam. We've been talking about the crisis about true God knowledge, certainly in the case of Judaism and also in the case of Islam. Would you say that there's a crisis of the sense of the holy, that there's a practice of religion, but without the sense of the holy?
Yes, this is the sign of the main decadence of religions, maybe of Islam. That's why I was insisting in a literalistic, dogmatic, or bigot interpretation of religion, because the spirit, the presence of the sacred, of holiness, is forgotten. So I'm becoming an expert of religion, but in order to have the encyclopedia of doctrine here, or I'm fed up of doctrine and I'm just having an emotional approach to religion. But religion is at the end and at the beginning a discipline of holiness. And so if we do not follow this grammar, which is a universal grammar that is present in different ways in all languages of religious doctrines, we are missing the identity and the orientation of a religion. So
you've inspired me in a beautiful way, and I tell you how. Because we're thinking of this institution, the House of Friendship and Hope, under the shadow of a holy man, right? A saint. A saint is a holy man. Someone who lives holiness, who lives divinity. And it's a reminder that if we want to cultivate friendship, if we want to cultivate prayer, if we want to cultivate hope, ultimately what we need to do is a recovery, a discovery, and a mutual inspiration through the sense of the holy as practiced by the finest of our religions. And that's what we're hoping to achieve.
May God bless you for this great project.
May you be part of that blessing.
I'm your friend. So.
You're a holy man.